Everybody, welcome to one more round. Today I'm super excited. I have somebody that I've done business with. I've known since I was 19 years old when he hired me at his health clubs. And, he's become a mentor of mine. So I asked him to be on the show a long time ago, and he finally agreed to come on. And in the new year, actually, he's probably going to do some co-hosting with me. But I wanted to introduce him today. This is Eric Stearns, former owner of one of the owners of Pure Fitness, Emerald City Athletics up in Washington, Burn It, Build It Fitness, Body by Design, Aftershock Digital, lots and lots of things. So thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we get it kicked off, I know your background super well, but for those people that don't know you, you started, young. You went into the military before you ever got in the fitness business. What was that like?
Well, I joined the military, and I was a 19 Delta, which is a cavalry scout, combat arms. My mother was horrified. She wanted me to do something, a lot more safe, but that was not my personality. Being an athlete in high school and primarily played football, basketball, and baseball. Played half a year of 1 year of junior college ball, and then was somewhat lost, not sure what I wanted to do, so I joined the military and spent a little over 4 years in the military.
Wow. Yeah, because you joined young.
Yeah, I was 19, I believe.
Okay. And then you got out. What made you get out of the military?
Well, I had an opportunity to go possibly be an officer or a warrant officer, and if you want to stay in long term, being an officer is a lot better gig and better money. But at the end of the day, I wanted to be in business, and I wanted to make money. And I just knew that long term that the Army was not going to be the vehicle for a lot of money.
Right. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty simple.
You got to limit your dreams a little bit.
But the discipline and the training and all the things you go through are absolutely set the stage for you to be successful, be disciplined, and to learn what your body can take and what you can take mentally, physically. There's no other place like it to find those things out.
What were some of the hardest things that did teach you the discipline in the military?
Oh, just how long you can stay. I think I've been awake 20 hours driving. You're 120-pound rucksack, and you do 20-mile road marches. They exhaust you, and you have to perform, when you're not your best, but your body can kick in, or you're cold. It's 30 below wind chill factor, and you have to function. Just all the different things you do. In the military, and really they train you to be distressed to be able to do it under duress. That's and you learn that your body can go places you never thought it would go. People have no clue what the human body and the human mind can do. So it creates that discipline and focus and all that. But it's and then you can't sue the Army, you can't quit the Army. So you get to deal with things that you don't want to deal with. Sometimes you have bad leadership, and they're not good leaders, and they're not, and they go after you. You have to perform and fall in line and go through all those processes.
Yeah, the mental aspect is huge, because I know certainly in your business career you've had to deal with a lot of stress, which we'll get into some of that stuff. But the military kind of takes you to that place where you can go in your mind that's different. I remember you and I were talking about that one episode with Ed Milet about the dude that did in Antarctica. He went across with a sled, and he was talking about in there. He's like, you can go to your ego and say, okay, I need to get through this. And the fact that he had identified his ego in his mind was insane.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's really unbelievable. And I'm old enough to where my platoon sergeant was in Vietnam, and he was in Special Forces, so he was a legitimate combat soldier. So we learned things a little bit differently from him, because he'd been in the real action. But just to have conversations about what he endured, and I think there were 12 in his team, and I think only 2 of them made it back, and he had to live with that his whole life, and very difficult for him. From time to time when he would have those conversations, but he also knew what it was like in in real combat. So that was a great man to have met. Sergeant First Class Hughes, still remember his name.
Wow. So. Well, and some of the camaraderie that you build in the military, were you able to take some of that and utilize to build camaraderie in your
Absolutely.
Clubs and
the greatest thing about the military is, and I'm not sure, to be quite honest, if it's exactly the same today as it was, but back then it's the only place in the world you can put different people from different backgrounds, different ethnicity, and you put them in a room and go, you're all going to get along. You're going to get along, and you're going to function, and it forces you to work with people you probably would never work with in your life if you're from, I remember I had one kid, African American kid from Georgia. I had a Puerto Rican guy from New York. I had a kid from Kentucky, and then me. We're all different backgrounds, and I'm from Seattle. So, and you learn to function because you have no choice. And at the end of the day, in combat units, if you don't function, you don't make it. So it forces you to learn about different people, and that's probably the greatest thing is to have an open mind towards different people, where they grew up, and all those different things.
Right, but come together for a mission.
And absolutely come together. Nobody really cares as long as nobody cares as long as you're a good soldier. Do your job.
Right.
The old saying, do your job.
Right.
So
now I remember something you told me. I mean, for a long time, but it was mission, men, self.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about like that and what you mean by that.
Well, especially in business, in life, the mission has to be accomplished. And I learned that in the military, but I also learned it from my mentor, Neil Schober, who I worked with for many, many years in the fitness business, is the mission's got to get done, because if the mission doesn't get done, everything else is a mess. And people get confused. They take care of the people over the mission. And the facts are, if you take care of the people over the mission, you can't take care of the people, because if the mission doesn't get accomplished, you can't take care of the people.
Right.
If you take care of the mission, take care of yourself, or take care of your men, you don't ever have to worry about yourself. You will be taken care of if you go in that order, and that's just the facts. But people get very confused on getting the mission accomplished, because the mission in business creates money for payroll, whatever, expansion, whatever you're trying to accomplish. And then in the military, the mission is, the objective has to be done, or you're not going to get where you need to go. It's like Normandy and the courage that they had back in World War II, the greatest generation ever. With the Fort Lewis Rangers went and recreated D-Day, how they went up the hill and all that, and they wept because the equipment was so bad that those guys had compared to what we have now. They couldn't believe it, how bad these guys were. They were just badasses. Yeah. So that's the thing. So because in the most uncomfortable thing in business is in the leadership role, is the mission has got to get accomplished, and someone has to drive that. And that person usually has some love-hate relationships with the troops.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you fail, everybody. No one, you fail, it doesn't do anybody any good. So you're better off to get the mission done so everybody's blessed. Right. If that makes sense.
Totally. So you left the military, and then I know you were into finance, and it kind of goes with what you're wanting to do in business, but was that something you always wanted to do, the financial world? No,
I got out of the military, and I'm going, okay, what's a pragmatic thing to do? And I thought, accounting. I said, I think I want to be an accountant. Seemed like I like numbers and all that, so I went to school to be an accountant, and I started working part-time at a gym in Federal Way, Washington, but I was driving 30 minutes to work and back and had full credits, and it was really a hassle. And talk about fate. This guy that worked with me in Federal Way he interviewed at Shoreline Athletic Club, which was a mile from my house and where I went to college. He comes back into the gym, and he goes, that's not the place for me. He goes, but I gave him your name and phone number. You should work for them. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Who are you? And I don't know really anything about the gym business except for I like to lift weights, and I started lifting weights in the Army, and I got the bug. So I go, what? And so this manager from this club starts calling me. He goes, hey, you're going to come to work for me. And it's over the phone. I haven't even met this person.
Right, yeah.
It's like weird. And he's driving me crazy. So I drive down and meet him because I think he irritated me so bad. Well, I end up going to work for him, and I ended up taking time off school.
Yeah.
And I started the fitness business. And basically, I was a natural. I mean, the first 15 days I was in the top 5 in sales in March. I think I started March of 90, I think, or something like that. And then all of a sudden, I didn't even know it was competitive. I went to a meeting, everyone looked at me like, wouldn't talk to me, and then I went, oh, this is competitive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I pretty much have done, never looked back in fitness. As an entry-level employee, worked myself up to club manager, and figured out how to hit quota and put teams together. And then I ran that club for about 14 months, and I went from 1 to 3 clubs, and I think I did that in only 12 months.
Wow.
And I was a VP for a company called Hearts Athletic Club in Seattle, and for about 10 years.
Yeah, I remember you telling me a story about meeting an accountant while you were in the fitness business.
That is a true story.
Yeah.
So I'm selling memberships. I'm doing pretty good. I'm not a manager, I don't think, yet. And I had this member, really good guy, and he comes in and he says, you still think about being an accountant? I said, well, yeah, I think so. And he goes, well, I'm a partner in a CPA firm. He says, this is how much money I make. And he goes, is that your car? And I got a Lexus. I found a way to, buy a Lexus. And he goes, I think you're really good at this. And he goes, you're going to be really bored being an accountant. He says, I think you should do this. And it's like those aha moments in your life where people come in that say something that really affects you. And I really listened to him. He was a super nice guy. And he just goes, I just don't think it's the right deal for you.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like after he said that to me, I went, I'm going to go full on this. I'm not gonna think about going back to school or doing any of that. Now the accounting didn't hurt me at all, because fast forward many years later, when I came to Arizona, no one can mess with you on numbers. I mean, I signed every check. I know financial statements. I understand money and all that. So it was really a blessing to have that education and understand that part of it. And plus my mentor, he was great. He's great with numbers, so he was able to, that he put it all together. But it didn't hurt at all.
Right.
To understand, accounting principles. Somebody signs the checks, somebody prints the checks. Safeguarding your money. I signed every check at Pure Fitness, every check, every month.
Yeah, and it's your height. Didn't you have like 800 employees?
Yeah, at least. I mean, I think our overhead was 1.4 cash flow break even or something like that. It was significant.
Yeah.
Payroll was, I think, over 700,000 or something like that. Your payroll and your rent is your big ticket items in the fitness business.
Yeah. It's interesting as you tell your story of how you got in the fitness business. I didn't know that you were working at another club, because my story was similar. Remember, I was working for Bally's, and I was young. It was I love fitness, same as you, because I played football and lifting was big.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym, and then he put me in the lead box department at Bally's, and which for those of you guys who don't know what that is today, you don't see them as much, but it's a box that sits on the counter at what I call guilty places, your Filiberto's, your McDonald's, that people can get a free pass. And then once a week, somebody would go collect that. And then my boss at Pure Fitness, at Bally's at the time, he quit. And he's like, Cindy Teachman, I remember, she was our district manager, and she says, Josh, do you want this position? And I went from, a 19-year-old making $12 an hour to making 30 grand a year. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. I felt good about that.
Yeah.
And then one day I'm at church. A guy named Leon Doris comes up to me. He goes, hey, you don't know me, I'm Leon Doris. He shakes my hand, and he says, you need to come work for me. And I didn't know what he was talking about. But Eric Lewis had told him about what I had done there, and I know you had wanted to start the program again, and he worked for you. And he said, come interview. So I had an interview with him, and then that's when I met you the first time.
Yeah.
At the Starbucks on Almasco and Elliott back in the day.
That's right.
And I came over to work for you. You guys paid me more money, and I felt it was great. But I got to see a culture that was being built that I didn't know then would be as effective on me as it is today, because I know what a good esprit de corps looks like.
Well, you wanted me to kind of speak on when I was up and coming. When I was up and coming as a salesperson, I was number 1, 2, or 3. There's 2 or 3 of us who were all really close. We super competitive. Being number 1 was really important, and we went after each other. Leon was one of them, as you spoke of him, and Joy Schamberger, we called her Sham. She was formidable. There was me, and we just battled. But and the biggest thing was to get a club, and we only had 3 clubs, so there wasn't a lot of positions available for the club managers. And but I remember we had we manualized the fitness business. Primarily, Neil wrote manuals, and you had to learn your script before you worked for us and took tours. It was pretty in depth to work for us. And I remember I never used the Prezo because I was just I just love fitness and I love to work out, so I just get people to join.
Right.
And so I'm
Your
meeting
enthusiasm got
yeah,
people to
so
join.
I'm meeting with Neil, and he's like, he looks at me, he says, over my dead body, will you ever get a club? Well, back up. Let me tell you that. I'll give you this for people. We're at a Christmas party, and they had promoted someone over me who everyone was kind of mad about, and I'd been there longer, and our production was equal at least. And I said something at a Christmas party that wasn't really the smartest thing, but my mentor says to me, Neil says, if you have the courage to come over tomorrow and talk to me man to man, come on over. So I get up, I go to the office the next day, and I face it, and he's like, basically says, hey, over my dead body, will I ever give you one of my facilities until you learn my stuff? He says, you can do your thing. He goes, you can sell. He goes, you don't know what you're going to say to two people. You don't know what you're going to say from person to person to person, which was absolutely true.
Yeah.
No question. I just could feel people, and it's one of my gifts, and I knew where to take them and all that. So he made me mad, but really he got me good because I went back and learned every prezo. I learned everything verbatim. I actually became better because of it, because what he needed me to do is I couldn't teach people what I did. I had to have a foundation. So I went from being the biggest virtuoso, sling it down the field guy to the most disciplined person running the clubs. And I remember I called him on the phone and I said, I know my prezo. He goes, well, I said, I can give it to you right now on the phone. And he couldn't help himself. He goes, are you reading it off the script? Like, and I'm like so mad, but because I know it and I can do it in like 7 minutes. Like I crank it out, but it did change me, and I was able to be better, and I've developed a lot of people, and was able to, it's the only way you can grow is having some kind of development program. But yeah, but he was going to give me anything. He made me go through the process, which I thank him for to this day, because it was what I needed to, and it made my life easier.
Well, with the way you manualized it and the scripts and the things you do, it gives your staff confidence, because a lot of them don't have confidence like you do, or be able to take people and kind of go on the fly. So you got to give them the confidence.
You're exactly right. I remember I didn't understand. I remember when I was so naive in sales. I didn't know close. I didn't know it. Try it, like it, use it, time, money, spouse. I didn't know how to overcome objections. 6 different. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just go, why wouldn't you want to work out? Why wouldn't you want big muscles? Why wouldn't you want to look better? And I'd see people come in and try to do this job, and they'd fire or not come back from lunch, and I'm like, and then all of a sudden I realized there's a gifting for this and all this stuff, but it was somewhat of a blessing because I didn't have anybody, had never really taught me anything about sales except for one person. So I had one person breathe into my life about how to run things and all that, which was a blessing, because I didn't have to listen to, I didn't go work at Bally's, which were terribly run gyms, and all they were doing was slinging deals. And I mean, we just didn't do it. We had a system. We took people through workouts. We cared about the members using the club. I mean, no one runs a more sophisticated system than we run when we run clubs, because we just work harder, and that's the facts. I don't even know if they can run them anymore. He's got some clubs in Seattle. I'm sure he runs them similar to that, but he's probably the only one that runs them that way, just where it is. So.
Yeah, I never forget, and this is kind of important because, Rick Clark, he's the one that kind of reintroduced us and got us playing golf and stuff. And Rick and I had done some business together, and he's been working with us for a long time. But I remember one day he was joking, because you guys were both managers at the time of different clubs, and Ricky was just joking around. He says, man, I've never met anybody that could take people that look like they came straight out of prison and it would follow advice and do it like Eric. Nobody could tame the lion like that. How did you do that? Because I know a lot of I've met a lot of your guys.
Well, I always liked, I'd rather have, I think Neil used to say it all the time, we're lion tamers, and do you want pussycats or do you want lions? And I'd rather have a lion than a pussycat. I mean, I just would. And as long as you can have a certain amount of respect, and it's hard, strong-willed guys, tough guys and all that, but at the end of the day, I'd rather go to work with those guys all day long. The biggest thing is you got to, try to have mutual respect. To do you do the best you can, but the fitness business isn't for the weary. It's changed a lot now with all the $9 things, and nobody, and just show up and throw $9. It kind of drives me crazy, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. The industry, for me, on some of these gyms, it really bothers me because it's not that complicated. Put a little more effort out into high and by, shaking hands. I mean, you walk in these places, and I went into a gym the other day. A broker goes, "Hey, we go look at this gym. It's 20,000 square feet. It has 400 members, and it's nice. And one employee running the desk, running everything. Poor kid's running there. He has no chance."
Yeah, what would you guess his overhead is on something like that?
Oh, well, just at least $75,000. I mean, if they got a deal on rent, I don't know what the deal all that is.
Yeah.
But you got HVAC here, you've got rent. I mean, not enough to make money
Right.
on 400 members, and your dues are $14.
Yeah.
So that part of it is, but nobody wants to sit in the lost art in the fitness business is production, in my opinion. And everybody wants to go to the training dollar and all these different things, but at the end of the day, your dues are your most profitable money, but it's the hardest job. It's sitting in that chute and running those clubs and getting guests and closing deals and keeping those members. And that's what we really focused on, and we focused on our write-off. I still do it to the day in my boutique gyms. I don't write hardly any members off because we understand the backside of it. It's a heck of a lot better to keep a member than to try to go spend the money. I mean, I work with you. I'm your customer too, as well as your partner. But we're always spending money on digital and trying to get guests in and all that stuff. It's a heck of a lot easier to keep them than to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and like you have one of the best guys in that realm, production, John, who you've trained and you brought over from LA Fitness, and Laura, one of the best trainers there is. So you got great people as well, and
that's the key too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key. You have to have great people, and you equip them, and then let them go do their thing.
Mm-hmm. So I remember. So now you're in Washington, and the club's sold, and then you got a chance to come out here. You were looking to go to a couple different places, right?
Originally, we were thinking about going to the Philippines, I believe, and we'd sold to 24-Hour Fitness. Mark Mastro was the king of the hill back then. Ray Wilson, who's kind of the godfather of our industry, who's passed away recently, he sold, I think, 67 clubs to Mark, which made 24 take off. And then they came and they bought Oregon, they bought us, and they bought Spokane. And he was moving. So we were going to go over with, I was going to be the one on the ground. Neil was going to come over, every other month or every 3 months. And we were going to go to the Philippines originally. Then we kind of pivoted to going towards South America, which I was fine with that because I've been in the military. I've been all over the world, so it didn't bother me to go to these countries at all.
Right.
So I was like, let's go. And then we met. I was in Vegas on vacation, and Neil was coming from somewhere, and he goes, "Hey, I want to meet you in Vegas. I want to talk to you." So at the Rio, I think it was, in the sports book, he comes in, he says, "Hey," he goes, "out of country, there's a lot of dynamics to it, all that stuff." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why don't we pivot and go to Arizona?" And it was Arizona or Pittsburgh, and I thought Arizona made a lot more sense than Pittsburgh because
it's cold.
Yeah, like right now, what's it? 5 feet of snow over there probably, and it was closer to Washington because my folks, it's 2.5 hour flight, so it's still in the realm and all that. So basically, we made the decision sitting right there, and we decided we wanted to work together and go that direction and not work with the other people because we didn't think that it would be the right fit for us. We're just different ways we run clubs and different ways we, and we were both, faith people. So they really weren't. So that was a big deciding factor too.
Okay.
And we basically, in that, it's first we go, let's go to Arizona. I go, okay, let's go. Want to go play blackjack now? I mean,
Yeah, right.
It wasn't that hard of a decision.
Yeah.
And we created Pure Fitness.
Well, and I love the dynamic because you talked to me about it a little bit, but you go from this gym that's got a lot of heat and multiple clubs and lots of advertising, like people know it up in Washington. Then you come to Arizona and you end up buying a club. Who'd you buy the club from?
Well, the original club we bought was built by the Ultimate Warrior, and a couple of people had bought it and had it for a year, and a guy that used to work for us, a guy named Terry Bowler, was actually living in Arizona and said, "Hey, you guys should buy this gym," because we couldn't go within 50 miles of a 24-hour fitness. We had a non-compete. They weren't in Arizona yet. So that's why we went down. I think we wrote a check for $150,000 for this little gym on called the Ranch, and wrote the check for 150 grand, sent in the letter to 24 that we were in business down there, which didn't go over well because they didn't see it coming. They thought we were, you know, we may do something with them, but we decided to go that direction. So once we put that in there, we were in business in Arizona, and it was a little 13,000 square foot club, and I thought that I would roll in and it'd be like Seattle, but in Seattle we put 10 years, 12 years of hard work in. We were on TV, we pounded, we'd own that market. Well, I basically came up against LA Fitness, who was really like we were in Washington. They'd been here, you know, they had, you know, name brand recognition. Nobody knew what Pure Fitness was. And I remember Neil told me, he goes, it's going to take you 10 years to build this. This is what it takes. Da, 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 da. And he was exactly right. You know, I had to get past the whooping that you get to build a brand, and we did. You know, and we ended up doing well. But it takes time to build a brand. Right. And but man, I thought I was going to roll in, and you know, I had a Ballinger club that had, I think, $160,000 in dues, and Shoreline. My clubs were making 30 or 40 grand before I ever wrote a membership. That's how profitable we were in Washington. It was a tremendously profitable company with no personal training money. We didn't even know what it was. So that was unbelievable. So I thought we'd just do that here again, but no, you got to go in, you got to pound it, and you got to go to work, and you got to go through the wars. And the war's hard. Very hard.
What were some of the breakthroughs in the beginning days for you?
Well, you know, the first year the ranch was really hard, and then I flipped it the second year, and took it to a, you know, around a $400,000 profit. But the first year it almost killed me. It was terrible. And then we did a Thunderbird club, 43rd Avenue and Thunderbird, and that was and once we got through that pre-sale, that was a really successful club. So that's kind of what got us really going. That was our first new club. You know, we had a big grand opening, and you know, we you know, I think we had our dues up to 145,000 or something like that. So that was what got us going. We had Greenway, which was profitable, believe it or not. 32nd Greenway had been a bunch of different gyms, but we went in and cleaned it up and all that, and it did really, really well. And then we were off to the races from there.
Yeah. So I remember in those early days, like you started adding club after club, and then you started working with the Dream Center at a certain point, right? Tommy Barnett, and
yeah,
was that your Scottsdale club before it opened?
Yeah, Tommy Barnett. So Neil and I go to that church, and then Neil got to know him also when he was here. He was here every other week, so we became friends with him, and we went to the Dream Center in LA, which is a pretty famous place for people coming off drugs and homeless people and all that. It's Matthew Barnett's been over there, gosh, I'm not even sure how long now, maybe 25 years or something. I think he went there when he was 19 years old. And we went on a trip over there, and we said, and they had a weight room up on the top, and it was the old plastic weights, and it was a lean-to over it and all this stuff. And Pastor Tommy took me down and showed me and Neil the room where they wanted to do a gym. Well, we were moving our Scottsdale little club over to across the street, over by the Harkins Theater on Scottsdale and Shea. So I look at Neil, I call him up and go, why don't we give all that equipment to them over there and bless them with a gym? Because there's a lot of people that have been in prison and stuff. These guys were, there's some, you know, and they've fixed these people by bringing them in and helping them out. And so he goes, okay, if call your partners, and if they'll bless this deal, then I'm good with it. Call my partners, and they are always great. And they said, go for it, man, go for it. So we had a relationship with our chip with Swift Trucking. So Swift Trucking took all the equipment over for free, basically. And me and my maintenance guy, facilities manager, Gary Segrist, went over together. He had a relationship in Gold's Gym back in the day. He's a big bodybuilder, and we went and helped put that gym together. And it's still there to this day. And then we put one at the church here. We built a gym here. We had done this in Seattle before that too, downtown Seattle. So it's something that we had done. So it was really cool, you know, to be able to bless those people. But I had 20 guys helping me put the gym together, and every single one of them been in prison between 10 and 20 years.
No kidding.
That was my crew.
Yeah.
And they couldn't have been more thankful. And I remember talking to Pastor Tommy about it, and he goes, they don't let people mess that gym up. The pride that they have for that gym, they kept that thing tight, clean, picked up, and it was really cool. So we were able to do that, and that was really cool. I mean, that was one of my favorite things we've been able to do, and my partners bless me, and Neil always is a big giver. He's always, we both love working out too.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
I've seen that, because you basically built that relationship in the gym, and then you guys started the food drive. I don't remember when you did it, but I just remember the first time I was a part of it. I'm like, this is huge.
Yeah, well, we did it in Seattle for years and years, and it was very successful up there too. So basically what we would do is create funny money. You get $1 for every canned food item you bring in, and we would start it around November 1st, and then we stop at about December 15th, so 45 days, and we'd fill our clubs with food, and then
I remember it being 10 foot high.
Well, the last year I think they figured we had 275,000 food items or something like that. I mean, it was crazy. But in Seattle, it was just a really cool thing we did, and so when we came down here, we were trying to get traction and get into the community and all that, and I think year 2, we go, hey, why don't we start the food drive? So we started the food drive, and we were doing it with a local group of people, and they didn't have the ability to really help pick it up, and I'm like, so members kind of got mad the first year and go, hey, where are you going to take that food in? And it's like they were supposed to have trucks and help us do that because we're running the business and collecting it. So I called up my pastor and I said, hey, I got all this food. I said, do you want it? And he goes, yeah. So the whole different operation. They were down helping us bag it, picking it up, and we give away 3,000 bicycles at my church every year. 1,500 girls' bikes, 1,500 boys' bikes, and then about 25,000 presents. And then we were able to add the food, and we bagged it by different groups of food and all that, and we bagged it, and it took 2 or 3 hours to give it away. I mean, we got it up to where it just became a phenomena, and the people that, my employees, and they just blessed me by really getting into it, and they would show up and help hand the food out and stuff, which was good for them to see, a lot of hurting people and all that, and we just grew it, and it's probably the one thing about selling the company is not having that influence to be able to do that part of it. That was really cool because we had so many members to accomplish that mission.
Yeah, and so one thing I want to talk to you and pick your brain about, because it's always been fascinating to me, because I've known you a long time. We've gone to Suns games together, and random people just come and tap you on the shoulder, and they thank you for all, you were the greatest place to work, so good to see you. In fact, one of my new guys I work with here used to work with you and had nothing but praise to sing. But you and Neil took families from Seattle. A lot of them moved down here.
Yeah.
How do you create those kind of relationships to where they're going to uproot their family?
Well, the fitness business, and it'd be interesting to hear what he would say about this, but it's a hard business. Mm-hmm. It's especially back when we did it, it's changed quite a bit. It's not like it was. We worked a lot of hours. I mean, I basically worked every Saturday from 9 to 12 while I was in town. I think I got home 9 to 10 o'clock the first 3 or 4 years of the company, and then I got off at 7, like year 5 or something, and work out at 5 and then all that. So it's a hard deal, but I always remember if people are working for you, as long as they're working for you, you owe it to give them your best. Train them. The minute you have someone working for you and you don't want to deal with them anymore, and you got to get them out of there. And we always had meetings, and we always tried to teach people how to save. We taught them we tried to do the best we could as far as work ethic and taking care of your mind and take care of your body, and we trained people in sales. I mean, that's the one thing. If you train people, you'll always probably have a pretty good relationship with them if you added value to their life. And some people aren't going to like you, and some people are going to, that's life. Mm-hmm. But in general, we always tried to give people, if they left our company, did they leave our company? Did they learn things? Did they have skills? And I'd say for a lot, as far as sales and work ethic and all that, there's no doubt that we taught really good, sound, fundamental things. Mm-hmm. So that's how you develop it, and we were paid a lot different. We were paid off profits in our clubs, people. So you get people buying in when they're looking at the financials, and they're saving money on payroll. So we taught them how to run a business too, and they were involved in that. And nobody does that anymore. It's more of an hourly thing now. But we had, my managers made, they did the job. They could all make $100,000. Fitness instructors made good money, and that doesn't seem to be the case anymore in the industry.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing we did.
In growing your company, it seemed like, and I know you were on the forefront, Neil was probably there too, but like always looking for talent in the industry. 'Cause you've told me, if not once, 100 times, I always have a backup to a backup to a backup. So you're always trying to upgrade.
Well, it's like we love football. I'm a Seahawk fan. I'll say it on here. We got beat
Cardinal
last
fan.
night.
One of
He's
our only
a Cardinal
points of
fan.
contention, I think.
But it's like, you can want to be a wide receiver, and for every Steve Largent who's not the biggest specimen and all that, how many guys are Steve Largent? Not very many. Mm-hmm. Then you got a DK Metcalf who he's 6'4", 230. He runs I'm going to take the speed if I can have character and discipline. You always you can't I could want to be an NBA basketball player, but I'm 5'8", mm-hmm. and I can't jump that good, and it wasn't going to happen. Just didn't have the skill set. So you got to look for talent. You owe it to your company to look for talent, and always trying to upgrade. Talent with character that fits into your organization. Though that's the other problem. Talent is great, but if it doesn't fit into your in with the team, and it doesn't, in the way you do things, that will be worse than hiring somebody who maybe doesn't have the same amount of talent, but they have better character for what you're trying to do. It doesn't mean they're a bad person.
Right.
It's just based on your organizational goals and and how you work together.
Yeah, 'cause in business, and you know me, you've told me I'm too nice many times, but I've always been interested in that because it can be difficult when you see someone that could be better in that position to try to make that happen. Because I know what you're talking about. Like, as long as the values are there and they're going to fit into your culture, if they have a different talent and skill set, it's like you're hurting your company by not making that move. But it seems like it's hard.
Terminating people, sometimes is the greatest thing you can do for people. When and I learned that. I was really blessed. That was a lesson that was taught to me very, very young, but from Neil. He taught me that very young. He goes, you're doing them a disservice if you keep them around. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had a good friend of mine. He was a Life Fitness rep and really talented guy. Sold us all of our equipment, and he's like, I don't think I want to go on the road anymore. I think I want to come in and be a manager. So I hired him, and great guy. But I watched him like within 2 days. He was an outside sales guy. Being inside bricks and mortar, he had no freedom. So he was a caged animal. Yeah. And I think after 2 days, I go, hey, you need to go back to life and get your job back. I go, because you're going to lose your mind in here. Mm. And I got some other friends they're outside sales guys. They couldn't go in and run a gym. Whereas for me, going in a gym and running a gym, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. It never bothered me at all. But that's the bricks and mortar play. But sometimes people, so I would go, hey, you need to go, Right. And he's like, thank you, because he knew. Mm-hmm. And that was and he would have probably stayed around for 2 or 3 months. And then the relationship gets stagnant or it gets negative because they're not happy, they're not producing for you, and it's a mess, so you're better off. Or if someone's just not, they just don't have the ability to do the job. It's not the right fit for them. Right. Let them go do something else. I mean, life's too short.
Right. I love that because, really, at the end of the day, it's the best for them. It's the best for you. And just, even though it's a hard thing to do, you're kind of letting them go so where they can flourish somewhere else, right? Yeah. Yeah. So you guys went on, you built a huge company with Pure Fitness, and then about 2010, you guys decided to sell it. What was the main, other than the fact that you were just absolutely crushing LA Fitness and they couldn't do anything but buy you?
Well, we had, I think they were buying a lot of stuff back at that time. And we had taken, I think when we sold, they had a list of the names. They're quite a phenomenal company as far as information. They knew everything about everything back then. But I think we had 24 or 5 people from their company and worked for them in the past, managers and district managers that we'd brought over, and hey, they did a great job. They all got retrained in the way we did things because my biggest pet peeve back in the fitness business is everyone's like, go write deals, go get it done, but no one gives anybody any strategy. And we always had strategy from our marketing to our, we had plays for everything. How you handle missed guests, temporary guests. How do you, we had first and second workouts and a monthly follow-up plus free boot camp. So there's a lot of different things we did to help the clubs succeed. Plus spend, $80,000 to $90,000 a month in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you answer the phone? All those things instead of going, oh, here's a phone book or whatever, or go throw rock flyers out. And so we brought them over. They were talented guys. They just they'd never had any structure or a playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And we gave them the playbook, and they started flourishing. And it took about a year to train them because we'd recruited a lot. And then they were kind of like out there going after their old company, and we did a good job at that. And my partner had we both had some health issues over the 10 years. He'd had some, I'd had some, and he lived in Washington, so he'd for 10 years come down every other week basically. And at the time there's an opportunity to sell and go back home and all that, and it was the right play
Mm-hmm.
for him and for everybody, and that's why we did it.
Yeah. Well, and it's good, and I know you sell a company like that, and you probably changed your life financially.
Sure.
Do you miss having a company that big?
Yeah. You enjoy, when you're in a city and you have influence, when you have a lot of members, that's the cool thing about fitness. When you have a lot of members, you have a lot of influence to do a lot of cool things. The food drives, the different things. You meet a lot of cool people, but I don't really look back. You know what I mean? I don't look back. I think that you miss it, but it's also you pay a price for this in this industry. Mm-hmm. And you go to a gym and you even ask me how do they make it? And nice gyms, they throw equipment in there and all that, but we ran clubs with personality. The old, you've heard it a few times, the piss drop system, mm-hmm. which sounds weird, but it's personality, service, results, obligation, promotion, and the sale. And the sale is the last part of it. And that's the thing, I think, that when I walk into big box gyms now, there's no juice. Yeah. It drives me crazy. It's not like fun. We used to, we were high, buy, we used to do this stupid thing called high five at 5, and I thought, oh my God. And at the end of the day, the members got hooked on it, like, hey, where's our high five at 5? Mm-hmm. You think it's kind of dorky, then the members are like, where's my high five at 5? And 5 o'clock, here we go, and high five members, and just connect with people, and you don't get that. You're buying an equipment package. Mm-hmm. You're buying equipment, and half these places don't have it. We had 12, 14 trainers a club. Mm-hmm. There's not even trainers in these clubs, in some of these clubs. So it's just just changed quite a bit. Yeah. And the gym should be fun because, nobody really wants to work out. Everybody's lazy, Yeah. So that's the one thing we tried to create was environment, so people would want to come into our place and get out. So that's why I like the boutique thing, because there's a lot of juice in the group personal training business if you do it right.
Yeah, well, in Burnability Fitness, you took kind of a concept that was out there, and you and your partners, you've created something like excellent. And I've met a lot of your members. I've seen the workouts, and you've created that kind of esprit de corps, that culture among the members. What do you like about the boutique business these days over at the big box?
You get to know everybody.
Yeah.
You get to know your members. You can spend time with your members. You intimately know. You just know all the members. That's the cool thing. You get to spend time with them and all that. You're not dealing with as many people, mm-hmm. So the quality is much better. And it's really, for a couple $100 a month, it's a great product. And our concept is we balance the cardiovascular with the weights. And a lot of the places it's just all cardio, all cardio, all cardio. You're never going to get your results just doing cardio, not long term. Right. You've got to build lean muscle mass. So we balance that out. Our cardio is sprint based, and then on the movement side, we just try to do safe movements and make sure we don't want people to get hurt. Mm-hmm. So that's really the burnability concept. And we try to have obviously, community is overrated, but we have a pretty good community in our gyms.
Oh yeah.
But my two partners that run it have created that, and they run it very similar to how we ran
Yeah.
our big box gyms.
'Cause,
And
like,
you know both of them well.
yeah, well, and like John, I mean, he's a partner in Regenerate with us, and so
Yeah.
like as many times I've been there right before classes start, and he and I are working on something, and then see the members coming in, and John knows everybody by name,
Yeah.
he gives them juice,
Yeah.
and you can see, I watch it, I look at people's faces,
Yeah.
and it lights up, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
excited to be there, and that's not a normal thing in the fitness world.
Well, unfortunately, I don't really blame the people. A lot of people got in our industry in the last 20 years that were not in the industry.
Yeah.
You know, really back when I started, you know, it was but it was kind of like a carny show. I mean, you know, promotions, but everybody worked out. All these old guys worked out. Ray Wills, everybody worked out. So if you didn't work out and you weren't really into fitness, those people weren't in our industry. And then it changed when corporate America seized an opportunity to go, oh, we can make money doing this. So you've got a lot. That's when I think it changed personally.
Yeah.
And it lost its purity. And you know, I'd say went that way. I mean, there's probably some old school guys still running gyms and doing it, you know, running it with that mentality that we used to have. But, you know, I mean, it was about you worked out. You didn't have IT guys buying gyms. So these people buy these gyms, they don't understand how to run a gym. They don't understand. Right. So they just throw a gym up and think that we'll go run a gym. There's so many more movements to it. It's a living, breathing organism. I mean, you got to run it like a nightclub almost, like or a great restaurant. You know that it's that work. It's touching people, connecting with people,
Right.
And I think that's the lost art too. But most of the people in these gyms, it's not their fault. They weren't trained. You know, that's the one thing we did. We trained a lot. We always were training every Thursday. Besides the last week of the month, we trained for 2 hours in sales and in systems. We had managers meeting. We trained our people constantly. We drilled, you know, we drilled. And a lot of it was repetitive, but how do you keep things going? You keep the focus on the basics, because the basics will always get you where you want to go.
Yeah. Well, two more things. I don't want to keep it too long, but one, 2008 hit, and there was some pretty tough economical times, and I know a lot of companies went under during this time, and somehow you were able to literally flip your company. How did you do that? What was your mindset during this period of time?
Well, you know, first you're scared because you're watching revenue go away, and you're like, what are we going to do? And then I remember we're looking at our dues, and we're going, we think people are even maybe stealing from us or something, because the dues, it's like the dues are going away. We're like, what is going on? And then we realized back then in 2008 they were canceling people's credit cards without them knowing, just canceling them. So they had no way to get billed. So we're sitting there and we go, what are we going to do? So that's when we flipped to ACH out of check accounts, because those cards don't ever expire. And that way, so we gave them I think $1 discount to set their billing up on ACH, and it flipped our whole company. Well, it saved us credit card fees down the road, and then that way we had uninterrupted dues coming in, because dues are your lifeblood in the fitness business. So we flipped the whole company. I think we had 10 clubs, and we flipped the whole company in about 6 months.
Wow. And there was like 50,000 members or something.
Yeah,
right?
And everybody's like, how'd you do it? I go, we didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand. We didn't have a choice.
Right.
That was our only choice. But it changed. It was actually something that changed our company, and we took it after that, and it just wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then, you know, tell you a quick story. And I remember I picked up my partner from the airport, and we were going to go to a meeting with the staff, and, you know, we're in the middle of this garbage, right? And been going about 90 days, and I just looked at him and I said, you know what? We ain't participating in the recession anymore. And I looked at him and says, just I got something let me go first when we get to the meeting, and then I knew he'd take it from there, and all that. And I just said, hey, we aren't participating in the recession anymore. And I kept saying it to him. And then we just started talking about, we're not doing this. And we got creative. I mean, our guys went out and did food drives and went door to door to meet members, and it went from like, oh my God, I got to go do all this crazy work to do it, to it became funny stories in the meetings. Oh my God, the dog tried to jump the fence and get me, and you know, we had one guy that says, wave at the house, like, you know. Yeah. So if they wave, then you go. I mean, they got super creative.
That's pretty creative.
I think it broke the spirit of fear. and got creative, and we worked ourselves out of it, and all the money we had, the revenue we'd lost, we got that back plus, you know, plus in excess of 6 figures, and turned it around. And a lot of it was just, you know, getting rid of the fear. And, you know, sometimes when you're afraid, the greatest thing you have to do is just keep going forward.
Right.
Till you get through.
Yeah, I think for me that's a good point. Like, you know, and you've been through some ups and downs in my life, you know, and through our companies and whatnot. But I know for me, when it comes to fear, the best thing I can do is just keep moving forward, because that's what courage is. Courage is just being fearful but still moving forward towards your goal. And as long as you keep going, it's fine. It's when you stop, when you're in fear, that you can literally almost feels like you're being seized.
Yeah, and it's tough, you know, and you just gotta go and try to stay creative too. And, you know, in leadership, someone's got to be the one that sometimes takes that all on for the people. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And they've got to be that conduit, and they got to take the proverbial bullets.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes.
Yep.
You know when you're going through a bunch of stuff, but you know, at the end of the day, you're never gonna, there ain't a person in business that hasn't went through, you know, good and bad.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I was going to actually talk about our heart failure. We'll save that for another time. We're going to be doing more of this.
Yeah.
That was a weird one, just to give you guys a precursor. We had heart failure literally 6 months apart. We weren't even in the same city. And if it wasn't for some of the things that he was able to share, I might not be here. That's just the facts. But
we are.
Yep, we are. And there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
But no, thanks for doing this. We're going to have a lot of fun next year, you know, doing some of these together and interviewing, because our styles are very similar but very different, and I can't wait for it. So thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
And guys, I know you got a ton out of this. Please share the show out. If there's some clips or people that you think could get some good stuff out of it, you know, share it with them on an individual basis. Like us on YouTube. We appreciate it, and we will see you in the new year.